by the title, you can already tell that this is not in fact an art fight video like I said I would be doing, since not even I can predict what my 2 brain cells are going to think up. Actually, to make a long story short, on a very long trip that I took over last weekend, I spent the entire time listening to Exandria Unlimited Calamity. And to summarize my feelings without spoiling anything,
I laughed, I cried, it moved me, Bob.
Brennan Lee Mulligan's GMing style is just mwah. And to be honest, I was already at this time about to send myself into yet another hyperfixation of meticulous world building for a D&D campaign, but listening to Calamity really just sealed the deal. So instead of working on art fight like I should be doing, I started writing a book. I looked through a couple of Dungeons & Dragons books that I have, took note of the important things that were fleshed out, and used the basic structure to help me figure out what I needed to get sorted out. And within 2 days, I had a continent with cities, a pantheon with symbols, an origin story for the creation of the continent and the existing empires/kingdoms within, and a few basic overarching conflicts that the players might encounter in the game. And you might ask, Lady Splitchin, why must you be so extra? To which I reply, I don't know. If I could help it, I would. I live life unaware of the passage of time because of this. Please send help. Now, the first video I thought I would make for this was my drawing of the map of the continent, although I was pretty torn on whether or not I should post this. I'm like 83.69% sure that the people I'm planning to DM this campaign for do not watch my videos, but there is that 16.31% of uncertainty that made me not want to have a video of me talking about making a map with all the key locations named and pointed out in a very easy access place for my potential players to find. And because of this, I didn't end up recording the whole thing anyways. But you know what you can see? The fancy illustrations that D&D books include as visual aids or just for viewing pleasure. And since I had a big old description of the empire already written out, why not draw the empress herself? Madrive Tetserbe, whom I will probably end up referring to as the empress for the majority of the campaign, because I don't know, it's my own fault for putting so many consonants in her name. What can I say? It's the Polish within me, wanting all those consonants next to each other. I cannot deny my nature. She is probably going to be the most important NPC in the campaign, and I say probably because if any GM knows anything, it's that your players, even if they do care about the plot and story, will end up doing incredibly unexpected things that could change the entire course of the campaign. Now, I'm not a well-versed GM by any means, but I do know that I created a story that was supposed to last maybe 3 sessions, and we're on session 4. They haven't left the town to set off on the mission that most of them accepted, and of the 4 players, 1 is applying for a citizenship in the town, 1 hired a mariachi band to follow one of the other players around, and the last 2 players bought a goat. None of which will have a huge impact on the story, but it was all certainly very unexpected. At the end of the day, it was technically my fault for having such an open town for them to wreak havoc in, but that's also part of what makes being a DM so fun. And my second favorite part of DMing is intertwining backstories. For example, I have this one ASMR paladin who is in my Curse of Strahd campaign, and things are a little slow for her right now as far as backstory goes, but what she doesn't know is pretty cool, right? So yeah, I'm super excited for all that. So now that I've pretty much geeked out about DMing for almost 2 minutes, I should probably talk about the drawing. Not to backtrack or anything, but there was a significant bit where I was using the mirror tool, and if I see anyone giving me garbage about how I'm a lesser artist for using the tools provided for me in my art program, I'm going to steal your kneecaps at 4:17 in the morning on a Tuesday, but good luck guessing which Tuesday. Now, Madrive was intended for a TTRPG setting initially. She was actually part of a collaborative story writing effort. We called this story writing effort questing. And there was one person who would sort of guide the story, and the rest of the people would follow along as players. It was sort of the successor to the world building that I did as a kid that I talked about in my first redraw video, which if you have seen, great, and if you haven't seen, just play it in the background of this video for like extra ambiance and the spooky concept of having multiple me's in the room at once. Just kidding, that sounds very unenjoyable, do not do that. The point is, instead of drawing characters and maps and saying things out loud, writing things in a Google Doc became infinitely more practical for questing until we got into D&D and then switched back to drawing characters and maps and saying things out loud. Madrive was originally a queen and not an empress, and was sort of the instigating person in the action, and she really wouldn't come back into play until the very end. The players sort of would go from section to section of the map, collecting pieces of a puzzle, alongside several like NPC type characters to fill out their party, and we had about 80 pages of single-space 12-point Garamond to show for it. Pretty substantial, but it never went anywhere. I had a whole plot and everything, but felt bad about turning it into a book since a lot of the character interactions weren't necessarily written by me, so instead I extracted all my concepts from Madrive's story, as well as a couple of other stories that met dead ends, and mashed them all into one big Franken concept. Oh yeah, this blackout bit right here, I redo a couple times, apologies for the eye strain, and I end up putting her back in black anyways. The best part of working digitally is that the layers and HSV adjustment/color curve adjustments will save you if you're not sure what color you want. You don't have to be sure, just put down any color and mess with the sliders until you get something you like. And then merge it all and work on one layer like the monster that you are. I promise you guys I have a style where I work on multiple layers and I don't merge it all down into one flat layer like a freak. I work with the fabric here, but honestly I forgot how I initially wanted her legs to sit. I had to go back and sketch over just to double check my anatomy a little bit. I should have kept an extra sketch like I did with my Krista redraw. I knew like when I started working on the gold details that I had wished I kept an oversketch just for reference, but I wasn't too bent out of shape over it. I thought that a very loose, not highly defined piece sort of fit the vibe I was going for anyways. Also, not defining lines and having chunky blocky shading meant that whenever I decided to face the wings in the drawing, I wouldn't have to draw every single individual feather. More about the gold details in the drawing. I know I'm no gold drawing expert, but I very, very much enjoy putting shiny things in my art. This bit was just for me. Again, I'd never really envisioned her with any sort of embellishments when she was just a queen, but now I suppose that she's an empress, she gets a halo crown thing? Also, I have no way to prove this, but if you're thinking that Madrive reminds you of Empress Layla's Kryn from the Kryn Dynasty in Critical Role's Campaign 2, I created Madrive before I started listening to Critical Role, but I have no proof of that, so RIP in pieces, I guess. I hope you all don't mind me rambling on about my little made-up campaign world and Madrive. I'm just a little excited about it, and I think it's a nice change of pace from me scrutinizing my art process constantly. So anyways, the current Empress is a little different from what she was originally. The amount of time she actually plays in the campaign is mostly determined by the players, but she's definitely more fleshed out than just being just the reason the adventurers set out on their journey. In order to stick with the continuity of her being very, very old by the time the campaign starts, I decided to take some DM liberties and make her an Aasimar from elf lineage. Now I know technically rulebook-wise, Aasimar are just Aasimar, and they mature at a normal human race, but live about twice as long as the average human. Of course, this means if you're an Aasimar elf, your lifespan gets absolutely nerfed and you die not super long after you reach what is considered an elf in adulthood. So while that is actually a genuinely interesting plot point that I might work into a separate campaign, on the beautiful continent of Vassaldal, being a celestial touched being with a holy ancestry means your lifespan doubles from whatever your original race is, which means an elf Aasimar can live well over 1200 years. Fun times! Also, that means Madrive has been Empress for a very long time. So I was thinking of putting this next section as an intro to the book I'm making, or maybe as a little tagline to send to people when I'm asking them if they're interested in joining the campaign. And if you don't mind me getting a little dramatic over here, I would like to read it to you. Vassaldal, even in its emergence, was a divided continent. Although much of the continent found unity and peace under Empress Modrive's wing in the Exeter Empire for hundreds of years, in the west an uprising is occurring. New blood threatens the seat of the Empress, and oracles speak of a great destruction about to sweep the land. Between buried secrets, collapsing cities, and a continent teetering on the brink of war, a small party must navigate both the strange terrains and the opposing views across the continent to uncover truths that could change the tides of war or destroy the world as they know it. So, what do you think? I think it could use a little work, and it's also pretty vague, but I mean, how much am I supposed to give away to entice a player, right? So I begin working on the wings here, and it's just a lot of layers, darks on the bottom, lights on the top, and I think it looks quite nice. For the wing on her right, our left, I really don't work out the details on it for reasons that will become clear later. You can see me going to work on the face and around it and then jump somewhere else because I'm clearly intimidated by it. I just feel like I draw everything else so well, and then the face just looks incredibly cartoony. I should have done the face before working on the golden details, I think. Having that extra space to work would have helped me out, but I'm just a crow who wants shiny things. Plus, it's so satisfying to see gold being painted, in my opinion, just because it has such bright highlights and dark shadows. The head. I really like the colors I picked for the face. Unfortunately, I don't think I picked colors with a strong enough contrast. Her face just felt very washed out at the end. And I know she's supposed to be pale with white eyes and all that, but again, it just looked washed out in comparison to the surroundings. On top of that, it was just difficult to work on the face and hair because, like I said, the golden halo crown thing was a little in the way. Again, it's just me wishing that I had kept a sketch to reference, but I think I made it work. I go through and add a little more shading just to create the dramatic lighting. And then the fun part. Actually, this part stressed me out. I was trying to create a cool edge and make it like a PNG with a transparent background, so I could place it on the corner of a page and the text could wrap around it, which that ends up not mattering at all in the end because of how Google Docs formatting make me struggle. But yeah, a little color dodge and there she is. Now usually, this is the part where I cut to a slow pan of the drawing in its final form, but this is in fact not its final form. It belongs in the book. I actually had to go back and cut off a little more off the top because I realized that the way it was shaped, it had a really sharp cutoff at the top that looked super out of place, and I did a lot of work trying to crop the image to a shape that I could wrap text around it. So that didn't work, and I got tired of messing with it, so I just put the image behind the text, and I would manually page break so that the text would stop before overlapping the pictures because I have a big brain, but only after like 15 minutes of trial and error with only more difficult options. So there is the final product. If you are in the campaign and you know it, I ask that you respectfully do not slow down the video and try to pick up hints, or at the very least, if you do slow down and pause the video, you pretend to be surprised when I do big reveals. I would greatly appreciate that. And of course, you know what else I greatly appreciate? You. You're super cool. And cooler if you subscribe and share a video with a friend. But either way, it all just really makes my day. And anyways, we proved in this video that I have no idea what I'm going to do next, so no promises that it won't be more D&D stuff or art fight. But actually, I was thinking I could set up a link to a poll in the description and have you guys pick my next redraw character. So maybe that will keep me on track for what art I'm going to make for next Friday, but let's be honest. Who knows? Not me.